The bad news for you is this. I told the Palestinians in Gaza that I was coming to tour the United States of America, and I would use every breath that God gave me to raise an American convoy to go to Gaza and break the siege as the British convoy had done. So if you don't turn up, they're going to think that you're just like all the others. They're going to think that the Arabs in the United States of America have left them alone. And I don't think any of you looking at this audience wants them to think that. It's easier for you than it was for me. And I'm ready to help in this with any logistical or organizational role that I can play with the experience that we have. We had to drive there. You can't drive there. All you have to do is raise the money, fly to Cairo, rent the trucks, buy the material in the market where your dollars will go far, put them on the trucks, put an American flag on the front. If I had 110 British vehicles, you can have 500 American vehicles. And I promise you, if 500 American vehicles flying the stars and stripes turns up at the Rafah border, Hosni Mubarak won't dare to keep the door locked. They'll have to oversight and let you in. And your flag can be associated with life for the Palestinian people rather than the death with which it's associated today. Which leads me to my review of the American political scene. You see, it seems to me that a new day has begun here. We have an opportunity, not just with the election of President Obama, which I think is extremely important and significant, but because of the state of economic collapse which exists in your country, partly, largely, perhaps, as a result of the $1 trillion the US taxpayer has paid in this so-called war on terror. Because after all, why do we have a war on terror? We have it because out there in the Muslim world, there is a swamp of bitterness and hatred filled with anger at the double standards and the injustice visited on the Muslim world by the West and particularly on Palestine. So not just because the US taxpayer is given $3,000 million every year in economic aid to a country of 5 million people. Think of all the poverty in the world, all the countries with hundreds of millions of poor people in them. You're giving the biggest amount of your overseas aid is going to a rich country called Israel. Not only the $3,000 million every year that you're giving them, there's all the military aid which goes free and which smashes into orphanages and kills Palestinian children in camps with regularity. But because of this policy, this blank check given by every American administration to Israel, you have created a swamp of hatred against you, out of which has climbed the kind of monstrosities that occurred in this country on 9/11 and in my country on the 7th of July 5 years ago. And as a result of that, you have to go and invade and occupy Muslim countries, and it's cost you $1 trillion when your country's economy is on its knees. So you have the opportunity now more than ever before of saying to the ordinary Joe public in this country, what's in this for you? How does it serve America's interest to have nearly 2 billion people in the world hating them to a greater or lesser extent? And at the greatest extent, people who hate the United States so much that they're ready to harm the people of the United States as well as immolate themselves in the process. So I think we need to say to the American public that it's in your own interests to correct this policy of more than half a century of giving Israel every dollar, every bullet, every brick in the apartheid wall, and supporting Israel on every occasion that it's possible to do so. I think the opportunities are there now for us. But we have to work harder and better. I make no comment on the work here. It seems that Al-Awda has done a wonderful job. But everywhere I've been, I'm struck by the fact that alliances that we had in the past, we no longer seem to have. For example, African Americans. In the 1970s, when I became involved in this question, the African Americans were 100% behind the Palestinians. Jesse Jackson used to regularly visit President Arafat in Beirut, in Tunis. Once upon a time, if I'd been here, if I'd been in Berkeley, California, where I was close by last night, half the audience would have been American blacks. And we've lost them. And we have to work better to try to reconnect with them. I don't know how many people here are from the huge Latino community in the United States. I suspect not so many. Whilst those countries have exactly the same relationship to empire and colonialism as the Palestinian people do. I was in New York and there were no Irishmen. When once upon a time, in New Jersey, there was no Irishman in the audience. When once upon a time, every supporter of Irish nationalism against British colonialism in Ireland would have identified automatically with the Palestinian struggle. So we have to work not just harder, but better, smarter. How many Jewish people are here in this audience? Not many. 1, 2, 3. In the 1940s and 50s and 60s, Jewish people in America were in the first rank of the struggle against apartheid and segregation in this country. When I worked undercover as an agent of the African National Congress in apartheid South Africa, traveling the length and breadth of the country on secret work, every house in which I stayed, every car in which I moved, every dinner in which I ate, every penny that I was spending was given to me by Jewish members of the African National Congress fighting against racism and apartheid in their country. Don't tell me we can't win more Jews to this struggle. We have to find the language and the methodology to do it. I believe this convoy idea can link up disparate communities. The people in Santa Clara last night, they don't know the people here in San Diego in the same state. Never mind the people with whom I was in Columbus, Ohio, or in Florida, or in New York, or New Jersey, or Michigan. This has to become a national movement. There are too many solidarity organizations, not enough solidarity. That's the reality. And this convoy idea can bring everybody together. Because we don't need a convoy from San Diego. We need a US convoy. That means everybody has to work together. And if you do, you will be able to raise this 500 trucks, no problem. And maybe that will be the beginning of a truly national effort. Because our enemies are very divided, just as divided as us. The Israelis, the Jewish people, are bitterly divided politically. In the parliament, in the Knesset, they punch each other, they have fights. I've been in parliament a long time and there's a lot of anger, but I never saw anyone fighting with each other. But they're united on one thing. On one thing. They're absolutely united to defend the state of Israel. And we have to be just as united to fight for the rights of the Palestinian people. We have to feel our power. We have power. We have huge numbers. There's nearly 10 million Muslims in America, in every one of whose hearts is the word Palestine, the idea of Palestine. Many of them, many of them are very rich people. And most of them are not poor. The overwhelming majority of them are not poor. We ought to be able to have a lobby in the United States just as powerful as the lobby our adversaries have.